Truth and Reconciliation Day is very powerful for me. It's a standing point in our time of history where we get to tell our truths, where we get to tell them our stories. We were literally, essentially erased what we were allowed to do in order to colonize to what the Caucasian aspect, the settlers, thought that we needed. And we have history, we have practices, we have so much to offer to everyone that I think it's important to understand every dynamic, every diversity of what's going on. And we're finally able to have that opportunity to be able to say, hey, we're people too. And our personality, our history, our heritage, everything is important. And it's now coming to light. And that is something I want my children to grow up understanding, that they have an impact in the world and that they are special for being unique and being Indigenous. Bonjour. Hi, my name is Christina Cearns, and I am a sexual abuse survivor. I was removed off my reserve when I was 15 months old and placed into foster home. At which time I stayed in the foster care system till I was 5. The family I was with, that foster parents chose to adopt us, and that process was extremely long. They had to do many checks and stop-ins to make sure that it was a happy house, because the family I moved into with were Caucasians. Once the adoption was final, my nightmare of a life started. I was being sexually abused by my adoptive brother, which I endured until I was 13 years old. I did disclose my information to my mother. However, my mother held the information to herself for all these years until she passed away about 5 years ago. My life with them was pretty good, except for the abuse and the mental abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse that I endured through these times. We were exposed to our culture. We were exposed to traveling, being able to see the world and get to know that. I was homeschooled shortly after disclosing the information, and I think it was a move to prevent me from speaking out about it. As a child, when it first happened, I disclosed it to my mother. My mother did do her best to protect me. However, she allowed me to be put in those situations again. And then once I started talking about it again, my mother informed me that I need to stop talking about the lies and I needed to move on. My mother was extremely abusive, mentally and physically. I got pretty much beaten on a daily. My father wasn't in the picture. He worked a job that required him to work 12-hour shifts, sometimes 16-hour shifts. So he was barely home, and when he was home, he was always sleeping. My older brother would find ways to come and sneak into my room, or find ways, if he was babysitting, find ways to get me to fall asleep so I wouldn't be aware of some of it. But I usually was very aware of everything that was going on, and I knew it was wrong. I tried my best to reach out to other people. If I got caught on the phone, I'd make phone calls. And if I got caught on the phone, I would say I was doing a prank call and didn't tell my mom that I was looking for help. My mom was also an FAS and FAE support worker. So that would have been very damaging on her ego and character, I guess. So I was constantly conditioned not to talk about it or ever say anything. Go to doctor's appointments and she would tell me not to say this happened. We're just going to go with what is going on, because I had some abnormalities during my abuse. Abnormalities come through urine samples. And then I found out my dad, after my mother had passed, he had no idea of any of it, which really makes sense to how he treated me. I was a human. I was a person. I was his daughter. He loved me. He accepted the choices that I did. He gave me the strength to do the right thing. I am no longer close with my family anymore. I've cut those ties simply for my healing, my growth, and to help my children through some of the history repeating itself part. The residential schools weren't talked about until my mother exposed me when I was 10 to what they were for and what they were used for, and she is aware of the negative impact that it had on our people. My biological family, I am aware that I have 6 older brothers and sisters before me, as well as 2 more siblings underneath me before I became adopted. After that, I have no idea. I've never tried to meet them in their ways. My mother left me a letter when I was adopted that I got when I was 18. She expressed she had alcohol and drug issues and was an addict. And in her mind, that was her choice to allow us to go into the foster system. I'm extremely happy with how everything has come to be. I'm not happy on how it came out to be, but people are realizing the truth that's behind the day. What happened in the past, yes, it's in the past. However, we can't move forward without knowing and understanding and coming to an agreement saying, yes, this was not okay. And just becoming more united as non-Indigenous and Indigenous cultures are starting to come out. I have exposed my children more to the Indigenous teachings, to the Indigenous ways of life, understanding plants and the herbal remedies, and giving them guidance on what our principles are as an Indigenous culture, and being willing to listen to those that either A, experienced residential schools, or B, from the outside view. It just blows my mind how many people didn't realize residential schools were actually real. That just blows my mind. Some people were aware in school of it, and then to find out that it wasn't highly talked about. It is your time to share your stories. It is your time to express your hurt, your sorrows, as well as share some of the happiness that may have stemmed from these hardships. Because you are important, you are special, and everyone deserves to be heard, as well as the non-Indigenous. Patience, quietness, understanding. You don't necessarily have to be accepting to it, but the understanding part is a huge thing. Be willing to actually take in the truths, as hard as they may be, or as little as they may be to other people. But to that one person, everything is impactful. Everything has a meaning. Everything has a purpose. This is the journey we're on. This is the journey we are going to walk. And we need to stay true to ourselves.